Stephanie Dobson is back with us this week. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator at Hankett Divorce Law and Mediation in Lloydminster. Stephanie, we have been talking about technology with separation and divorce, and we're going to continue that today with basically talking about getting a technology plan for kids, getting everybody on the same page. So let's talk about some of the things you recommend when you have kids in two different homes and you're trying to make technology work and you want it to be the same. Where do you start?
Well, it's funny when you think about this topic, it sounds so simple, right? Kids, electronic devices, but my goodness, there's a lot of things to think about when people are living, have their children under one roof. It's even more important to talk about this when you're under two roofs. So there's sort of two basic concepts that we should look at first. So the first one is, when should a child actually even get electronic devices? So, there's lots of different kinds. I mean, there's cell phones, obviously, tablets, laptops. If a kid is into gaming and other electronic switches, and I don't even know all the different gaming ones, but there's just so many different ones. And so it's really important for the kids to get or the parents to be on the same page, because the kids can really get into the middle very quickly, and it can cause parental conflict. So the best practice, I would say, would be to make sure that you agree with your co-parent as to the actual age, the appropriate age that a child should have any electronic device. And then once you've figured out what the age is for the actual getting of the device, then we have to figure out how to actually use the device. So I would recommend that families have consistent rules between their households, things like screen time, the types of games or apps that are allowed on it, or even are there device-free times of the day. During a meal time, are they allowed to have their devices, or not until after your homework is done, or those kinds of things? Because what I find is that if you have different rules between households as to the use of the devices, then you have the fun household and the rules household, and then that of course creates some struggles.
When parents do need to impose limits on technology, how do they do that? Because as you said, you don't want it to be different in both places. So where do you go to, I guess, kind of look to make those limits work for everybody?
Well, the first thing is, I would say, at the device level. So, there's parental controls on most of these devices. And so, how do you make sure that you're monitoring the device usage? Now, then the question is, who is going to have access? Who's going to be the main person that runs that parental control? Are both parents going to have that passcode, so that, when the on-duty parent is there and they, says ask for more time, will that on-duty parent be able to have that override passcode to allow that, or does it have to go to the parent with the admin settings? Ideally, both parents should be on the same page about content ratings. So, there's the levels that you can set in your settings about, no rating over 14 plus, no rating over this, or whatever that may be. And then once you've figured out what the usage might be, then we have to look about consequences. So in the event that a kid, not the kids ever do push their boundaries on electronics, but if they should push their boundaries at some point, or they need to have their device taken away, what would that look like? And try to create some consistency. And if that consequence needs to carry over into the other parent's home, so for the next 3 days you're not allowed your device or something like that, and you're going over to the other parent's house in 2 days, happen on that third day, is the other parent going to be willing to carry that over? So the other thing, just to flip it on its head, of course, there's consequences, but let's also remember that we want to also reward the children for following the technology rules.
And what about costs associated with this? Because it can get pretty pricey when you're getting into certain video games that kids want to play. And, if you have one at one house, it's a little bit more expensive than the other. How do you deal with the costs associated with this?
Well, and you labeled the first one of them, which is the cost of the actual, the apps or the games, but there's even more than that. So there's the cost of the actual device itself, right? So how is that going to be allocated between the parents? Are there financing options? Can you spread the cost out over the term of a contract? And then even, is there going to be a contract? So if there is, whose name does it go under? And is there an expectation that the kids will contribute to some of that cost, or is that what about the brand? Everyone seems to be pretty determined of, are you an Apple or an Android user or otherwise? And then if that is going to be shared between the households. And then one of the wonderful things we can decide to really save the money is on that data versus Wi-Fi only type of devices. So if we could just go to Wi-Fi only, there's not that monthly cost. But the data, that just sure adds up quickly.
All right, Stephanie. Well, again, lots of things to consider. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll chat with you again next week.
Yeah. Thanks, Stacey.